What's up? To the Qué Golazo podcast. We're going to talk about the U.S. men's national team losing to Panama. And Heath Pearce and I, yes, Jimmy Conrad's here with you. We're a little bit disappointed as the Qué Golazo podcast starts right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We're a little disappointed. We're a little angry. We're a little sad about the performance by the U.S. men's national team. 7 changes to the starting lineup from the one that we saw against Jamaica, where we were so happy afterwards, Heath Pearce. It didn't work out. And again, I think we fell into the category, and I'm speaking about Greg Berhalter here, where we hoped that these changes would bear some fruit. And instead, well, we got some fruit, but they're all lemons, Heath Pearce. And I'm upset about it. How are you feeling, my friend? Great to see you as always.
I'm feeling similar.
I hope so.
I am upset because on one hand, I want to be like, Greg Berhalter, what are you doing? He's a former teammate of ours. I just want to be like, come on, man. Like, I know you well enough to know that you couldn't have believed this was going to work. And then I turn around and I think about the times that I've been a player in those situations that are tough and they're hard. And then you go, I don't know, man. Like, you kind of gotta, I don't know whose fault it is, who's to blame, but when you look at 7 changes, you really do minimize the ability to have cohesion, to be on the same page. Again, I had heard that the players didn't know until late last night. Some of them probably woke up to messages of them being in the starting lineup while you're down there. And again, I know there's moving pieces, and I know it's not easy and it's quick turnarounds, but overall, it just seems like a difficult recipe for success.
Do you think that, wait. Do you feel like Greg Berhalter had that Jerry Maguire moment where he had some bad Mexican food or whatever? I think Jerry Maguire had like a bad burrito and then wrote that whole thing, and that led to him, coming up with this idea. And I mean, that getting a late night text to know that you're going to start is interesting. I'll just say that. Now, before we take any steps forward, I do want to say, if you're watching live on YouTube, and I can't emphasize this enough, we want to hear from you. So drop your thoughts in the comments, whatever it is, your hottest takes, your silver linings. Hopefully you can find some silver linings, whatever it may be about this U.S. men's national team performance against Panama. If you want to shout out Panama, fair play to them. I thought their tactics were spot on. They were on the front foot for most of the game, and I thought they played pretty well. And they also took CONCACAF shithousery to the next level. They really played that card and wasted time. The ball kids were in on it. Fans were running on the field to delay time. It was all working for them there at the very end. Fair play to them for that. Also, if you're listening to this on podcast form or in podcast form, it's very nice. But you know what's even nicer? You subscribing to this so you can give you the free content over and over and over. The good stuff, as we like to say it, the juice, the goods. So make sure you make that happen. It doesn't take long. Hit that button. Leave a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. I want to leave some comments about how handsome me and Heath are, even though you can't see us. You're just listening to us. We won't say no to that either. And then also, of course, dear viewers, again, I just want to reemphasize, hit us up with your comments. We want to talk about it, and we'll bring some up on screen. Our producer, Des, will make sure that we get the very best of the best on screen. What's up, Heath?
Hey, Jimmy. I just want to, this just popped into my mind as you were talking about giving credit to Panama. And I just think when I go back to El Salvador, when I go back to Honduras in the first half, when I go back to now Panama, how good those teams are at breaking our press, at getting through our lines, at just making us look disjointed. And then on the flip side of that, just how hard they make it for our national team, the U.S. men's national team, to break through. There were times that I looked when Panama would press, and sometimes they'd send 5 guys. And Moadou said it on the broadcast. If they could play a little bit quicker, they're actually overcommitting numbers. That if you have enough intelligence or you're thinking fast enough or you're kind of composure and you're tuned in. We know that we have the technical ability and whatnot. We can break this, but it was almost like they called our bluff every time. And again, people talk about, well, the pitch is slow or it's not that nice and it's hard.
Yeah, they're playing on the same pitch, dude. Yeah. Okay, but go ahead.
But my point was that what I liked about against Jamaica in the second half against Honduras was that willingness to just fight, right? Just and take away actually Jamaica. I'm talking about second half Honduras. Just that willingness to fight, to say, okay, again, you're going to break through one line of pressure. The next guy's going to arrive, and you can see that energy. We didn't see much when the subs came in, but you could see that energy come back a little bit of just that willingness to play just a half step quicker, where the game starts to become a little predictable, in, out, out the other side. And it's playing at it just, Jimmy, when you played in games where just the quality just gets a little bit higher, because you went from playing MLS to playing with the national team to playing in a World Cup, that it's not a world of difference, but the game just gets a little bit faster and a little bit quicker and a little bit like just less room for error. that if we can get to that point, things will change. But if we stay in this kind of like nervous mode of like, I don't want to make mistakes, I don't want to be the one taking the risk. It just seems like other teams have sort of unlocked themselves to playing freely more than the U.S. does. Sorry.
No, you make a great point. No, and I appreciate that. And shout out to Garrett, who says we're very handsome. We appreciate you, Garrett. He also said 0 shots on goal. And I want to use that comment from Garrett also with your point, Heath, and kind of tie them together, because there was one moment in the first half that I saw Yunus Musa pick up the ball. You probably remember this, at midfield. He had a great turn to come out of that pressure that you're talking about, Heath. And then he runs and breaks the lines, breaks that press, the one that Panama are overplaying on because they don't think that we're good enough to play out of it or won't do it enough consistently, and they can break us on it because we are a bit naive or a little bit too casual, right? But in this particular moment, Yunus Musa had a great turn. He ran with the ball 20 yards, broke the lines. We played the ball wide, and we actually had meaningful runs from Zardes. Like, he could actually time his run. Yeah. We were so frantic. I can't even remember a time during the game where we were actually like, boom, 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 a little tiki-taka for 5 passes, especially in our attacking half. I can't recall that ever happening. And if it did, it felt very peripheral, right? It didn't feel like we were really intersecting or cutting out players from Panama. They were always in control of the game. And I think that's what pisses us off the most, is that we never felt like we were in control of the game. We never made them suffer. They were never uncomfortable. Now, in fairness to our strikers, and I'm going to say this here, this starts with our back line. And Heath, I kind of wanted, we didn't even done this before, but in a review, let's go line by line and really evaluate what happened here. Now, we changed. I like that. We changed three players in our back line from the Jamaica game. That's too many players for me. I maybe 2, and they could be your outside backs, but it just feels like there's too many players to change. Okay, say you want to agree to that. Then you change out your center defensive mid, the guy that you're used to sitting in front of you to kind of block the passing lanes. And sure, Acosta's done the job. But Mark McKenzie, let me go back to the center backs. Mark McKenzie and Walker Zimmerman have never started together, and they've played 34 minutes together in total. That's not a lot of time to throw them into the pressure cooker of a away game in CONCACAF. It just isn't. And then you throw in a center defensive mid who isn't Tyler Adams. I love Colin Acosta. Don't get me wrong. I love his game. But Tyler Adams has been the guy for us. We know he has the energy. We know he has the legs. The guy's the spine of your team. He was the captain. Dude, throw out Tyler Adams again until he can't run anymore. And then we can bring in Colin Acosta another time. This isn't about anybody's feelings. World Cup qualifying, we don't care about your feelings. We need the players that are going to go out there and perform and are used to playing with each other. I just thought it was too many changes in the back line. I thought on the right side, Shaq Moore, he did okay in Gold Cup, and he was okay today, but did he make a fundamental difference for us? I don't know if Yedlin would have either. Maybe Des probably wouldn't have either. I don't know. George Bello, for me, 18 years old. I don't want to give him too much grief because he's still very young and you're still learning the position. The goal we gave up against Honduras, he just got caught ball watching. He wasn't alert enough to know that there might be a guy that he needs to slide over and help and cover, right? That comes with experience. So we start him in this game, and he almost got caught early on in the first half. They should have scored, and the guy missed it with his toe. And George Bello's not sliding over. Like, he's allowing somebody to get inside of him. So I see that. Then I see later in the first half, he's got Timothy Weah tracking the runner behind him. So there's no communication between the two. And I just thought that was a really naive choice to throw George Bello out there. But the thing is, we don't have any other options. Right. Serginho Dest was hurt, apparently, or he's got a knock. And Anthony Robinson didn't travel. So that for me was like a hope spot. But anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on the back line. Anybody else wants to chime in on the comments, or let us know later on the podcast as well. Let us know.
It is funny. Gooch was saying at the halftime on Paramount Plus, on the halftime show, he was saying change the outside backs, change the fullbacks. And I don't know if he was just saying, because he didn't say what the suggestions were, what the changes are, right? You could put in Yedlin, but there wasn't really a ton of options, right? You would really be going out on a limb to make the changes that you had to here. But here's what my issue is. There is a man named Joe Scally who's not in this camp. That could have been your chance. Yeah. He's not even left-footed. He's not even
I love this.
Right?
Yo, keep going. I love this.
But I do think that, if you're talking about having that moment of the bad Mexican food and makes you change your mind at night, that could be the guy that you go to. He taking that step up to play in the Bundesliga is a big leap. The quality of where he was and where he is now, he's been able to cover that gap. So there's some trust there. And he's more of a fullback anyway. He's not an out-and-out attacker. But anyways, on that back line, I thought it was, again, disjointed at best. And you talked about it defensively. I'm going to talk about it offensively. Okay, there were times that Walker was driving up, George Bello was driving up, Mark McKenzie was driving the ball up, and you're like, okay, that's the right thing to do in this situation. And then you're just sort of waiting until the press almost makes that tackle, and they're just playing a square ball or something, or they're forcing it, or we tried a few diagonal balls that were off. There was just like this disjointed, what do we do in the buildup? What do we do if they press us? What do we do if we break pressure? What do we do if they sit back against us? And this constant confusion in the back line, and then also Acosta. And by the way, when you talk about Yunus Musah doing that drive up the field, and I tweeted this, and this is the silver lining that I have for a player like him. Tried it in the first few minutes to get a little cute. Got the ball poked away from him, right? That is usually when we go to these games where we see a number of our players go into a shell and just try to survive, right? They make a few mistakes. They get shook. They're like, oh my gosh, it's hot here. It's humid. It's bouncy. It's like,
you start thinking about everything but the game.
Yeah. Like there's this, elephant that's on my chest right now. I can't breathe, all these things. And it happens. It's happened to me before in those situations where you're like, man, I am not the player that I thought that I was. Look at what I'm doing right now. But then he continued and was just completely unfazed by those moments of mistakes. And his willingness to come back when Kellen Acosta, I don't think, wanted the ball in tough spots. And Sebastian Lletget didn't want the ball in tough spots. It was coming all the way back to be like, give me the ball. I'll take it. I'll turn. I'll be on the half turn. I'll get into these tough spaces. I'll play that square ball that's going to have to break two guys who are trying to bite on my pass. And that to me was like amazing. So then when he came out, I was shocked again when I look at Greg Berhalter choosing to leave in Kellen Acosta, bring in Tyler Adams. I'm like, why would you take Yunus Musah off again? Maybe he needs him in the third game. Maybe he saw something that I didn't. I didn't think that Yunus Musah was at his best, but at least you could see that he wasn't
trying to do something.
Yeah, he wasn't fazed by the moment, right? And I thought a number of our players were fazed by the moment. And again, he's young, and I know that you don't want him to whatever. No,
but you can't use it. I mean, you can leave George Bello out, who I thought was struggling too, and you leave Yunus Musah on, so that kind of cancels out that young argument, But But I do want to get your thoughts on this, Heath, because we got one from Kai and we got one from Nayo.
By the way, Natalie Cross was agreeing with you earlier when she said Greg Berhalter. Well, not agreeing with you. She was agreeing with there's too many changes, but she was saying Greg Berhalter got cocky with the 7 changes against.
Yeah, it's a good shout. No, and Kai said the same thing. Like these guys are used to playing 3 games in 7 days, especially the ones that play in Europe with the Champions League or Europa League or whatever it is. Why is it all of a sudden this big arduous task that they can't handle it? They can't handle it. I know there's a lot more travel here, and the travel's a little bit farther.
But Jimmy, you did it. Jimmy, you did it. You would go and play 2 qualifiers, go back to your club team, and play in your game. That is a lot of that. There's no that's still a flight somewhere around the world. 2 flights around 2 qualifiers, and then you go back and play. And I think again, I get that we need to rotate. You always rotate based on the game at hand. You might be playing offensively or defensively, but 7 is a whole new team. And you're getting maybe 1 training session, session, right? Like tactically, like how do you again? Unless go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to jump in and say I honestly wish you wouldn't have told me that he texted the players late at night saying they were starting. That just makes me feel like it was more of a roll the dice. Here's who we're going with. Best of luck, boys. We got this. I trust you, kind of thing, without kind of really thinking through what that meant, because 7 changes is a lot. So there's my question to you. Nayo said, and this is a great question, we've had more bad halves in World Cup qualifying than good ones. At what point is coaching the issue?
That's a good question, man. I mean,
I'll let you go first.
Hey, thanks.
We're both friends with Greg.
Hey,
that's the hard
thanks
part.
Thanks for that tee up, Jimmy. Let me go ahead and answer this. I got Des right now on the live edit, our producer on the live editing app, ready to chop this thing up and chuck it out into the ethos. But no, I think we are at a risk of over tinkering and over analyzing these games. I again go back to the fact of the only times this team has been successful. And don't get me wrong, we've played decently at times and we played beautifully at times. But what has made this team successful is energy, it's fight, it's desire, it's commitment, it's the game being predictable for our team, being on the same page. It hasn't been because of long stretches of quality play or the fact that we've seen our best players that play 10 plus Champions League players come out of their shell to become greats on our national team. We're talking about Brendan Aronson being one of our best because of what he does, right? He's efficient. He understands the game. He came on the field today and you could just see he speeds the game up a little bit more. Tyler Adams, same thing, speeds the game up a little bit more. So why are we continuously going into these games and not pressing higher and not making it harder? Why not take calculated risks to win the ball in higher positions? There is a risk in anything that we do, but there's more risk when you're just going to sit back, not necessarily sit back, but be disjointed in the way that you play. So I do think coaching has a big thing to play into this. I also don't want to forget, by the way, how hard these games actually are. They are hard. I don't remember ever going to any away game, any away qualifier that I played in and coming out of it being satisfied or stimulated or excited about the way I played. Even if we won on the road in an away qualifier, I still went into the locker room being like, am I going to start next game? Because I didn't really do much. Like I kind of just defended well. I like kicked the ball into the stands and I had a few crosses and I completed most of my passes. But like, is this like how I would judge myself as a player? I don't know. But we got the result that we needed. And again, when you go down to that one moment, we talk about set pieces, you talk about individual moments of a game that make you go, okay, fine, it's going to be ugly. We're going to suck today and whatever. We're still going to get something out of this game. And to give up something playing in a zone mark, again, back to that question about coaching, zonal marking away from home where just a simple flick can beat you, I think is poor. It's just poor. And that goes down to the players. Because again, you know what it's like, Jimmy. Set pieces are a mentality. That is extremely personal. You got to make it very, very hard. I think doing that zonally is very hard to be accountable. But
yeah, like, you just triggered me because I put out a tweet as well. And before I get into what my tweet said, make sure you hit that subscribe button after you write a comment, suckers. Okay. And we're going to get to Preston's thoughts here about the subs and some of the selections there and leaving on Acosta and Leggett for 90 minutes. He thought it was a bit curious. And I think Heath and I would both agree with that. But obviously there might be some thoughts about Costa Rica in mind.
Keep those questions and comments.
Keep those comments coming, though. We want to keep answering as many of your questions as we possibly can. Yeah. Now, with regard to my tweet, I wrote, I rarely use the word hate. It's just so strong, you know, and it's divisive, of course, but it just feels so absolute. And I wrote, I hate zonal marking on set pieces, defending set pieces. I just can't stand it. The fact that you would stand in a line and then not mark anybody. And when you're not marking somebody, that means they get to actually run and jump in time. They have all the momentum and you're standing there and then you have to jump from a standing position and try to head a ball out. It just, I don't know where the advantage is. Sure, there's safety in numbers, I suppose, that if you put enough guys there, they're not going to have that space to run into.
But do you think that's a crutch, though, Jimmy? Do you think that's a crutch? Because I struggle with the same thing. I struggle understanding, and there's a number of games that I've called this year in Major League Soccer where they play, some of the teams play in zonal marking, and they get. I don't mind a mix of both. Like you can have one or two guys zonal, but the rest have to be marking. Yeah, you just have to. But do you think that's because they don't believe? Better than you. Do you think that's because they don't think that the man marking is good enough? Or do you think that's the system that they think is best? Because I could see it going either way or arguing for either side.
Well, but if you think it's what's best, they're going to hold guys offside by not putting anybody on the line. That's the new fashionable thing on defensive set pieces. You don't put anybody on the post. And that way, when the flick comes in, they're going to be offside. Well, if the flick is an own goal off Jossie Zarda's heads, who gives a shit if you got somebody on the post or not, you know? So I just don't like zonal defending. And Taylor Twellman, one of our friends and former teammates, also said, when you have somebody starting off the post, they go attack the ball and head it forward. Jossie Zardes is now zonal defending, and now he tries to get his head on it, and he heads it back towards our goal. There's just so many reasons and so many ways things can go wrong in zonal defending, and that I feel like you could eliminate a few of those if you just had maybe their top three players on set pieces man-marked. Make it as difficult as possible for them to get any type of momentum. And then you have one or two guys, maybe one that's off. We used to have somebody right off the 6. He'd be on the 6-yard box, even with the first post. That guy would be zoning the first, and he'd attack everything in front of him. And then you'd have somebody like even with the goalkeeper in the middle on the 6-yard box, and that's it. Those are your two zonals, and everybody else is man marking. And maybe you have somebody on the near post holding the post, and then everybody else is doing their job. And it becomes very clear that what you have to do to have success, zonal defending for me is just it's what we saw. What happens? It pisses me off.
Yeah, I agree. I think zonal marking.
I think there's a place to mix it.
There was a moment in this game, Jimmy, and where there was a free kick from wide against, and the players had their arms stretched out, arm to arm, and they were almost measuring the gap. I'd never seen this before, and maybe it was just a random moment where they all just had sort of airplane wings, arms out, but like they were all putting their arms out to sort of gauge distance between the players as they were pushing more and more players towards the back. From the near post.
I remember.
And Matt Turner was telling the Leggett to come back further to the right, and then he would bump the next guy, and there was like this gap, this spacing thing. And the problem is it just takes one player to drop early, or it takes one player to not drop into the right spot to break that. And again, it's easy for us to criticize that when it doesn't work because, you know, for the same thing, he might be saying, well, we've been doing this forever and nobody's saying anything because it was working. But now because we get scored on, you want to criticize the man marking, like go back and we've done it. You know, perhaps they've done it for 20 games and we haven't noticed, right? I don't actually know that, but I'm just personally not a fan of it at all because like you said, You against me, you could be the best header in the world. If I get a one-step drop, I'm out jumping you every time. And I'm getting up before you can get up, so that even if you do challenge me, I'm up over the top of you and I'm winning that header.
I mean, everybody's done it. You go for a header and you feel like you've got it. And if somebody gives you that slight nudge, you've got no more momentum. You can't generate any power because all of a sudden you're trying to head the ball and it's like all neck. You're not using your full body anymore and it just throws you off. I just wanted to say very quickly that I remember the play you're talking about because I had a friend text me going, is this rec soccer? What are these guys doing on defending? I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to respond to this text. I'm upset right now. Now, with regard to what Preston said before, he wanted to talk about the subs and we brought on Aronson, we brought on Tyler Adams. Cool. Great. That's going to hopefully help us improve. But to your point, he took off Musa, and I don't feel like Adams and Acosta play well or as well when they have to share that space together because they kind of do the same things. That could be left for a different conversation. But ultimately, we're at 0-0 and he basically puts in a double pivot. So one of those two guys has to join us and join the attack and or help us transition in a meaningful way. Then he brings on Aronson, who now has to kind of catch up to the speed of the game. And he's trying to do the best he can, but you could tell it was hard for him to combine, I thought, in some ways. Yeah. And then when we're down a goal, he brings on DeAndre Yedlin. And I was a little bit perplexed by that as well. Now, Ricardo Pepi came on as well. And there was one other player that I'm forgetting at the moment that came on as well. Oh, Roldan came on. But the Yedlin one was a bit interesting because I didn't think Shaq Moore was hurting us in a way. But Yedlin did come on as a sub against Honduras and ultimately dropped in a dime for Pepi to score. So maybe there was some of that impetus. There was that kind of thought behind it. What did you think about the subs? And this goes for everybody listening and watching as well.
Yeah, it's weird for me because two poor performances if I go with Honduras and I go with this game, and we're doing halftime subs, right? And I think halftime subs make a statement. That's a statement to the player who's been subbed out that I'm not even giving you the extra 50. The maybe 2 or 3 times that I was subbed out at halftime in my career were defining moments between me and the relationship with the coach because he's making a statement. He's telling you, I'm not even giving you a chance to come into the locker room at halftime and I'm going to talk to you and say, hey, you better figure it out. Because you know how many times that in your career you have that where somebody's like, hey, I'm going to light a fire under you. You got 15 minutes to figure it out or I'm going to sub you out and you're going to be done. To go on halftime and make those changes is basically an admission of getting it wrong, right? It's not even being like, okay, maybe we can settle down and change some tactics and figure it out. It's like saying, okay, I got this wrong. And that's where I'm kind of seeing this with Greg, where he's doing these halftime changes. And again, I wanted Yunus Musa to stay on the field.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Like I
actually thought legit. I mean, legit. And there's another thought that Preston said. I want to throw it out there just so you can finish your thought. But he left Acosta and Legette out there for 90 minutes when I thought Legette wasn't being that impactful. He's going to do the work, of course. The guys, I have nothing but respect for how hard this guy works and to have even put himself in this position to be somebody we can rely on as a national team. But at that point, I don't think he was helping us move the game along, and he wasn't helping us transition in a way that was helpful. So you keep Musa on, who, to our points before, was trying to actually look for those types of link-up plays and trying to make something happen. And maybe bring on, at this point, I'm actually looking for somebody that can settle the game down a little bit. A Busio, a De La Torre, another guy that can help us do that maybe can find that ball in the half spaces, as you mentioned before. Do you think there was some thought behind why Acosta and Legette stayed on for the 90 minutes?
I'm not really sure. Again, I think Legette, I think Acosta are hugely important for this team in terms of the type of game we need them to come in and have an impact, right? That just wasn't today. And if you look at what Yunus Musa did well against Jamaica, which earned him the start in this game, was just getting into spots that make it very difficult to defend and understanding how to get it out of them, how to triangulate that midfield that made the players around him better, got time for the players around him. Just that one time where he turned and ran up the field, broke pressure on the dribble, he did that against Jamaica, and you go, okay, now they've got to respect him in a different way. Well, guess what? Now the next player gets to pop into that space, or now he checks back and somebody tracks and follows him because they're like, I can't let him turn. And now you freed up space for somebody else. And that confidence and that willingness to know that this guy can break us at any time makes the players around him better. And so when they took him out, I thought, again, it became one-dimensional again. And again, I think Acosta is a quality player, but when you're trying to break through a team, you go, okay, take him out. So then what's next? You got Tyler Adams, you got this double pivot in there. Are we going to play through that? Because I don't think we've ever played through anyone that well with the two of them except for maybe some minutes against Mexico when we figured out how to break the press. But otherwise, you're like, okay, now we got double pivot. Are we going to go into a back three? Are we going to release our fullbacks to go higher? I mean, what is the reason behind it that's going to create the advantage for this U.S. team? Are we now going to play more direct? Are we going to play diagonal balls? Is the ball going to come in, out, and out the other side? And now we've got ourselves a little bit of a counterattack situation or numerical advantage. I was trying to figure that out as it went along. And it just felt like they threw in another player just to be more defensive again.
I would love to hear the instruction, and maybe at some point, because we have some friends on the team, just give us some. Maybe we'll have to wait till the window's over, right? Because they're still in the middle of it. But after the fact, once they go back to their clubs, maybe we can get some more insight. I would love to hear the instruction that Greg was giving them in this game. When you come on as a sub, Brendan Aronson, this is what I want from you. And it could be as simple as, I just need you to go find the game. I need you to sit on the ball and like allow us to actually transition in a meaningful way. I don't even really remember us outside of a handful of times of creating numerical advantages, whipping a ball in where Zardes could actually make a timed run. And now I want to bring up Yak-Yak's question. And Yak-Yak, thanks for dropping it a few times in the comments. And keep those comments coming, everybody. We love the conversation that's happening there. Yak-Yak said that Greg was fired from the Swedish club Hammarby because he couldn't create any offense. And when you look at tonight, we see something similar, 0 shots on goal. Now, as someone that, we're both defenders, we see the game through a defensive lens, me probably more so than you. And so it's really, really interesting when you start to look back at Greg's history as a manager that he's run into some of these problems before. They're not new things that are kind of popping up in his managerial career. These are things that have kind of followed him around, whether he was there at Hammarby, the Columbus Crew, or even now with the U.S. men's national team.
Jimmy,
what are your thoughts on that?
Here's a follow-up real quick, and then I'll answer that.
Okay.
Do you think, and answer this honestly, take that whole game, we finished 0-0. What's your take? I mean, again, I'm creating a hypothetical.
No. I mean, it's not as...
It's a crap game. The team played crap, but you've gotten results in crap games before. Is that enough?
Of course. No. I would feel lucky that we got a point, that we survived. And we would be talking about what this team does so well is that even when, this is the narrative, when they don't play well, they still get results. And today they didn't play well and they finally got caught. Now, you had mentioned something on HQ that over the last 5 or 6 games, and there's a fun stat now, we haven't scored in the last 8 first halves. That's a crazy stat to me. That's a trend. That isn't just some one-off game. That's 8 straight games we haven't scored in the first half. That's something that needs to be addressed and looked at and thought about. And it kind of speaks to what Yak-Yak was saying about us not being able to create offensive opportunities consistently. With the narrative for sure would be that we know how to survive. We got this, we got this backbone and all this stuff. We gave up a goal on a set piece, but we didn't play well. So if we did get the 0-0 draw, I'd feel grateful and thankful that Panama didn't make most of their opportunities. But I would still be leaning in hard on the fact that we didn't make them suffer. They were never uncomfortable. And that pisses me off. Like we never put them, it's crazy to me that because more often than not, even if you have the worst teams of all time, I'm talking FC Sheriff versus Real Madrid in the Champions League. Now, I'll do respect that Sheriff. They're on top of their group right now. But let's just say Sheriff against Real Madrid. Even Sheriff is going to have maybe a 10-minute window where they're going to kind of have control of the game because Real Madrid's tired or things aren't working out or whatever. It's just what happens in the sport. Play 90 minutes. The other team, no matter how poor they are for the most part, are going to have a little bit of the game. We didn't have any of the game, dude. I don't remember us having any of the game. And that's what makes me the most pissed. And I think I'd still be talking about that, whether we got the 0-0 or lost 1-0.
And I will say this against Jamaica. And by the way, Des, there was a comment up recently. I think it was about Ricardo Pepi that you just put up about needing to be our savior to get it right at the end of games. I don't remember what the exact comment was. So if you want to throw that up again, we'll address it. But Greg Berhalter plays Greg Berhalter ball, right? I do think, to his credit, when he was in Columbus, a very attractive style of play, knew how to build up in the game, had the quality players, a personnel-based system. You can't just decide you're going to play it, right? We've seen coaches in the past that just go, you know what, I'm going to play this way because this is the right way to play football. This is the right way to play soccer. And you're like, yeah, but you have a bunch of guys that got two left feet. And so what do you want us to do in this situation? I will say that Greg Berhalter has evolved in his style of play. And now I think we're seeing that we're kind of caught between, which is, what's the identity of the team? The upside of Greg Berhalter playing just Greg ball every single game from the very beginning, now 40 games in, is you would have an identity, right? You would have an identity that you could go back to fundamentally. Okay, First 15 minutes, we high press. After that, we drop our lines to the top of the circle, okay? If they break our pressure, we fall into this line. This is our line of confrontation. This is how we defend. When we win the ball, this is where the spaces are when we're playing against a 4-back or a 3-back, or when somebody crowds the midfield in a diamond or whatever, 1 striker, 2 striker. You learn all those things during the game so you have an identity on and situational awareness to know what, when the game's giving you something, how to get out of that. The problem is I think we've shifted away. I think Greg has evolved knowing that he's got this much energy and speed. I think that we're a good team and in a lot of other ways. And now we're trying to piece all of this together. And not only do we not have a best 11, we don't have a best 18. We don't have a best 21. And so we're just it's almost like we are our own worst enemy in terms of player development. Jimmy, most of the time in ours, like in our generation, you were, you kind of knew who were the 16, 17. The rest were like scrapping for anything. You knew that you were going to use Brian Ching down in Costa Rica to fight for everything. Like there wasn't a whole lot of other options, right? Like that's the way it was. And now you've got all these different options, and you don't have just like a player that's better than the other player. You have a completely different type of player that can be a striker. You have a completely different type of player in Yunus Musa than you have in Sebastian Lletget. You have a completely different type of player in Kellen Acosta than you do others in your midfield. And so you have all of these wide ranging styles of play, and you're trying to kind of hodgepodge them all into a system. And I don't think we figured that out. But I do want to say I give credit to Greg for trying that. But I think fans are starting to say, hey, you're getting it wrong more than you get it right. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, or as Wes is saying there, you can see the comment on the screen. Greg hasn't evolved.
I think he has evolved.
I think he has a little bit
moved away from his system of play or style of buildup where we had to play through. You remember the early days?
Oh,
we tried to play through everything.
Remember we played Mexico and New York City. I was there in the stands, and it was Zach Steffen touching the ball more than anybody else on the field for us, and we lost 3-0 because we were trying to play out of it. And he's like, we got to try it. This is the time. Like, what do you no, we try this stuff when they're U15 national team. And then as they develop in that system, then you make sure it comes into the full team. You don't try this stuff with the full national team. Like, are you insane? So yeah, I do think he's evolved in some ways. And now you're talking about a possession-based guy that loves triangles and rondos. I'm sure he's a lot of rondos in his life.
Yeah.
But now he's talking about verticality, and I know it's not straight like route one verticality, but there's some element of that I don't think I would have thought he would ever come out of his mouth, 5-6 years ago. So
well, the problem with the evolution is that you fall into these gaps where you're kind of stuck between the old and the new, and you haven't got into a rhythm. And that's the problem with a national team in general, is that you don't get enough time to evolve it, right? Greg Berhalter plays the same system at Columbus Crew the entire time that he's there. And you tinker and it changes and evolves. I don't want to disrespect that and say he did the same thing over and over, but it's still rooted in something. And I think the national team is now on this journey and growth of like, oh, wow, I think we have some different types of players now. Maybe we can try something different. And we're caught in between that. That doesn't take away. Take Greg Berhalter aside. You still put 11 players on the field against 11 players from Panama. And our players, I think, are of higher quality and better. And they got outplayed. They got outfought. They got outworked in the same way that we did against, at times against El Salvador, against Honduras. And that comes down to fight, a mentality. And that needs to be very clear. And again, I said this many times, Jimmy, and I know I'm going off on these tangents, but if I'm Greg Berhalter, the only video I am showing my team, especially when we're playing away, is what won us the tournaments this summer. And that was not, we didn't, play through everybody. That the only team that we dominated was Martinique this summer. Gianluca Busio was the American Pirlo in that game. And we dominated. But outside of that, we played okay. But we found ways to get results through fighting, being difficult to beat, scrapping for stuff. Like that mentality was there. And that's the only thing that I'm applying to these games. I'm not, okay, maybe line of confrontation, press and all that stuff, but the rest will come. And if you have that as a foundation, you become very, very hard to beat. But I think we go back into these situations where you have all these quality players that don't play like this in their club and they go, man, this is different. I don't know. I don't know if I like this. It's not that fun.
Yeah.
When you tell me we're going to go down there, we're going to just fight. I'm going to kick the ball long a bunch of times. And then maybe we get a point. Like, of course, that's an identity crisis. And I'm worried about that. But that's all I would keep showing these guys to say, hey, when we are at our best, it's because of these things that we control, not anything else that exists out there.
Sure. All right, everybody, we're going to take – no. I love the tangents you're going to go on. We're going to keep those coming right after this short break, so do not go anywhere. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Qué Golazo podcast. I'm Jimmy Conrad, your favorite former U.S. men's national team player, alongside your second favorite former U.S. men's national team player, Heath Pearce. Maybe if he was hosting,
I might be third now, Jimmy, with some of my takes tonight. I'm falling.
Well, I don't know.
Falling down some people.
Well,
I might be going up, moving up.
We might be down the list. Ricardo Pepi, I think, still maybe number one in everybody's hearts at the moment. And we got a question from Maximus Prime, who did want to know who our best 11 is for the U.S. And I did want to bring that up because I do think for all the Greg haters out there still has to be an element of understanding that we didn't have a lot of players to select from. From this particular game. Weston McKennie wasn't there. Pulisic, Reyna. There's Anthony Robinson. So we're all of a sudden feel really thin on the left side. Dest, I think, was nursing an injury from, we're missing out on John Anthony Brooks didn't even come. Tim Ream didn't come. We're missing some pieces here. That said, I still don't think he got the lineup right, given what he did have at his disposal. But yeah, it's really interesting with regard to the current situation. So before we actually get to the best 11, being able to choose everybody, I guess, from a healthy squad, if you want to go there. But I did want to say, why didn't Matthew Hoppe play this game? And what are your thoughts on potentially Chris Richards not getting to start in this one? Was it just because Walker Zimmerman played so well and McKenzie deserved a look after his performance against Honduras in the first qualifying window? Because I want to see Chris Richards play. And if you're going to roll out all those changes, why not roll out everybody, But I was actually kind of curious about Richards and then Matthew Hoppe. Any chiming in on that?
Yeah, and by the way, for anybody who's just tuning in, make sure you throw those comments in. And if you haven't already, you're just wandering upon this page, make sure you subscribe. We talk about all things all the time. Jimmy and I taking over right now the pod for this CONCACAF qualifying. But look, I think Matthew Hoppe is one that's confusing to me because he seems to not care who he's playing against. He kind of just has, again, that same Brendan Aronson energy where you're like, well, at a minimum, he's going to run it, guys. He's going to try things. He's going to work. He's going to fight back. He's going to have that energy that I think is so infectious in this team. And so I'm a little bit surprised. Chris Richards, again, hasn't been great in the national team, but he's playing every game in the Bundesliga again. And I think there's something to do with that. Gianluca Busio looks great for Venezia right now. Yeah, the team's struggling. And yeah, he's very, very young, just like Chris Richards. They're actually super young. But what's the difference? And if I'm Mark McKenzie, I'm going, hey, man, why do I get to play these away games? Why can't I get the Jamaica game at home? Why can't I get it where we're spread high and wide and I get to hit a few nice little diagonals? And if I don't, my winger's clapping his hands to me instead of going like, man, keep the ball. The difference is like you hit a long ball in a game where your team is buzzing and people go, oh yeah, nice try. Down in Central America, everybody's yelling at you to keep the ball, stop turning it over. So I again, those are some of the changes that I'm wondering. Matthew Hoppe is a player that I think should have had a role in these first couple of games and could certainly disrupt play. And I think even off the bench, when you're talking about bringing that energy off the bench, I'm just not sure. We brought in DeAndre
Yedlin. We need a goal, like bring on Matthew Hoppe, throw as many guys forward as we can. And at the end, we got Walker Zimmerman going up top, right? I know at that point we didn't have any subs, but it's just been like, why we need to just shifted to a back three at that point? Like we give up another goal. Well, at least we were trying to push forward. That's what gets me a little bit frustrated. Again, to reiterate what Heath said, if you're new here, hit that, we call it a subscribe button here. Hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment about how you're feeling about the U.S. men's national team's performance against Panama. We're obviously frustrated. I can tell that.
Jimmy, we got a hot take on the screen right now. A real hot take.
What is it?
Richards is better than Zimmerman and McKenzie. Not necessarily a hot take. I mean, Chris Richards, young. He's still unproven at the national team level, which I think
that would be the only caveat is that he's still unproven.
But in terms of fantastic in the Bundesliga, and by the way, Hoffenheim's a huge club. Yeah. So do you think that's a hot take, or do you think Jesse A is onto something there? And again, it's a little bit critical. No, it's not in these away games, but like, is there something to that?
So here's what I'll say. Yes, there is something to it. The benefit that a couple of our players got that are now kind of considered our first teamers was the Gold Cup. Okay. Matt Turner came in, had a lot to prove, played tremendous. He's our unquestionable number one right now as goalkeeper. Miles Robinson comes in. Oh, we're hoping, talking about James Sands, talking about all these other guys. Miles Robinson, by the end of the tournament, obviously he scores the winner against Mexico. That's always going to help your cause. But that he secured his spot. Chris Richards hasn't had that type of run yet. He hasn't had that run of games where he can prove himself. And I was kind of hoping it would be this window. Now, I don't know if Greg's trying to bring him along slowly, like, hey, this is what it's like to play in a World Cup qualifier. Just sit and watch the Jamaica game. Ooh, this is how it feels to be away from home. Take a look at how it feels and tastes, and maybe you'll get to play the next one. I don't know exactly what the methodology is, but to Jesse's point, if Chris Richards gets those run of games, I think we'd be having that same type of conversation that, hey, this partnership between Miles Robinson and Chris Richards is our partnership moving forward. And that could be John Anthony Brooks, on the sideline, which would be kind of crazy because when he's in peak form and playing well, he's arguably one of our best center backs as well.
I will say that in a game like this, and I think Mark McKenzie does an ample job using his left foot, driving the ball up the field and connecting with his left foot, but not having natural-sided left-footed players certainly changes your ability to change the point of attack, to find the weak side pass in these pockets, things like that. And I think he attempts those at times, but it definitely changes the dynamic. So when you're thinking about John Anthony Brooks and things like that moving forward, it's really hard to imagine him not having a role. The upside, by the way, what we're talking about right now is a 22-year-old replacing a teenager who could maybe sub in for a teenager. That's a really good argument to have. Like, we are top, I think, number 2 or 3 in the world for under 21 minutes played in Europe right now for players from all nations. The U.S., I think, is second. We have all these players coming through the pipeline right now, and we're getting valuable experience. I will say this. The U.S. went and lost to Panama. It is really easy to go out of these games with a point and then not learn anything, right? When we were getting punched in the face in that first round, different players playing, different experiences. They came out of that with experience in the second half against Honduras and go, okay, that's what it's going to take. Now, I don't think we did that. I don't think we even got close to doing that.
No, it never looked like we were going to score.
No, but I will say that this is another learning experience for this team. Okay, it feels really good to draw and learn, right? But when you lose and have to learn from that and know that, okay, we lost everything in that game. We lost the fight, we lost the battle, and we lost all the points. And the whole world is now looking at us to now have to bounce back with a little bit of pressure. I think you continue to learn in these situations. Fortunately, we're not in a bad place in the table. We're playing this next game at home against Costa Rica, who I think we're much better than, though I think Costa Rica is now going to have a different confidence. And so it is a learning experience. I don't want it to be all doom and gloom with this team. It was certainly a poor performance, an unacceptable performance. But as Aaron Hall is saying right now, Scally is better than Bello, Yedlin, Moore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, another versatile player who can play fullback on either side.
All right, I'm going to ramp up and just answer the question from before with Maximus Prime. I don't know what his name was, actually. Maximus, I don't know. Maximus something. So I'm going to go Turner in goal right now. I will say Anthony Robinson, left back, 4-3-3. Anthony Robinson, John Anthony Brooks. If everybody's healthy and fit and ready to go, Miles Robinson next to him, Serginho Dest on the right. Tyler Adams holding in right in front of them. Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa. I like that 3 a lot.
I love that. Oh my gosh, when you say that midfield, I get so excited. Say it one more time. Say that 3 one more time.
Yeah, Tyler Adams holding, and then right in front of him, Weston McKennie and Yunus Musa. I love that. I love that midfield. Great. Inject it straight into my veins. I tweeted that out not too long ago. And then I think you have Pulisic on one side. Ricardo Pepi, I think it's the guy, man. I really do, until proven otherwise. You could obviously maybe flip-flop. You have a Hoppy. You could have a Daryl Dike, a Josh Sargent. Jordan, I mean, it's kind of cool that we can maybe pick and choose who we want up there, but I think Ricardo Pepi is the hot guy. And the fact that he didn't start when he's this red hot gets me a little frustrated too. But just to finish out this lineup, right now, I kind of have Brendan Aronson over Gio Reyna. And even though Gio Reyna, nobody should be guaranteed a starting spot with the national team, right? Whether your dad played in 4 World Cups or not. And even though he's a terrific player and plays for Dortmund, I just think that Brendan Aronson does a little bit more to drive the game. So I kind of put him there. And then obviously we have some tremendous super subs coming off the bench, which include Gio and Timothy Weah and all the forwards that I mentioned. And then even in the back line, you can kind of pick and choose based on how players are performing. But that would be my starting 11 right now.
Here's the only thing that I would give the chance, and I'm going to go with that same lineup, except I'm going to go Gio Reyna over Brendan Aronson on this one. Purely because... No, as my starter. Gio Reyna is going to be my starter.
Yeah. But Brendan
Aronson is super sub for sure.
Got it.
At the moment. Now, I do think that you have the ability with Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, that you can pull in a Gio Reyna to play in that 10 spot underneath, which I don't think he's been great at. But we also haven't had a Ricardo Pepi to play with. And I think that Ricardo Pepi is going to make Gio Reyna a much better player to know that he has that combination play, somebody that, again, Ricardo Pepi's game is relatively simple when his back is to the goal. And I think he gets players involved around him even better. And so I think Gio Reyna, who's a pass and move, the feet off of him and get into good spaces and wants the ball back in tight spots for combination play, I think that could bring out the best in Gio Reyna within this national team.
That's fair. That's a fair thing, and I would be happily switch that out.
Yeah,
based on peak form. But there's something about Brendan Aronson's game I really like.
I otherwise that's the only thing that I can see of having him not be a starter. And then I would have to say, hey, Gio, you're gonna have to battle with Yunus Musa and Weston McKennie for that spot on the inside. Otherwise, I just don't see, and again, Brendan Aronson isn't going to be as effective as he is now. And I think his energy is a huge value to this team beyond just what he does with the ball when he has the ball. I think it's something that this team needs to set the standard of moving forward. And I think when he has that, whether he's on or off, he just makes the game better and faster and more predictable. And I think that's hard to erase. But I'm just giving Gio this thought of like, hey, what if Pepe was the U.S. national team's Holland, even though it's
all right. We got a good question again from Nayo, who's just bombing in the good questions. We appreciate you. Keep those comments coming in the section. Hit subscribe while you're hanging out there. You can hit return and then go slide over to the subscribe. And if you want to turn on your notifications, we're going to be getting after this all through World Cup qualifying. And of course, the Qué Golazo pod, bringing you all the good stuff. We have a ton of interviews with all the players on the team, and not only the U.S. men's national team, but all the good stuff from around Europe and South America as well. I think you'd really enjoy it. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Niall says, is the fact that we played this badly and remained second in the standings not proof of how easy and forgiving CONCACAF is instead of how difficult it is? I don't know. It's kind of looking at two sides of the same coin kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah. What's the phrase?
Yeah, two sides of the same coin, right?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, when I look at some of the groups over in Europe, or if you go look at CONMEBOL down in South America, you find a lot of similarities that, it should be easier for some teams on paper, but then when you actually have to play the games, you realize it's a lot more difficult than that. So let's take a look at the standings as they are. Mexico getting the results in this one, putting them on top of the table. Have yet to lose throughout this competition. We're on 8. Panama's on 8. Canada with a surprising draw. I actually thought that Jamaica were going to not necessarily lay down, but they just have not been playing to the best of their abilities. But it's a big draw for Jamaica. Canada's got to feel like they missed out on some points on 7. Costa Rica with a big win, coming back from 1-0 down to El Salvador to win 2-1. That's going to give them some momentum going into this one. And I want to get into some hypotheticals here with you and everybody else that's watching and listening, Heath. El Salvador, we like Hugo Perez, former U.S. men's national team player, coached a lot here in the youth side of things for the States. Went down and took over the national team job. Has done excellent there. A little unfortunate not to have a little bit more to show for it. Then you had Honduras and then Jamaica at the very bottom. Let's play hypotheticals, though. Say we don't win this game against Costa Rica, even if it's a draw. Where do you think Greg Berhalter? Do you think we're riding out Greg Berhalter throughout this World Cup qualifying phase, no matter what? Or maybe not no matter what. That feels pretty extreme. But I mean, if we drop a few more games, one more qualifying window where we don't get that many points, do you think U.S. Soccer would consider firing him? And if so, now who would you bring in? And I feel like Jesse Marsch isn't a viable option because I think he's going to be with RB Leipzig, and I don't think he'll be ready to leave after only 6 months on the job. So it has to be somebody realistic. Everybody in the comments.
Well, who's coming for it? Landon wants the job for sure. Landon wants the national team job. I guarantee you, Landon wants it. I don't know. He'll take it anytime. I think for sure that's an ambition for any player.
Sure.
I think, but I don't think we're at the point where we need to discuss his job yet.
That's why we're playing hypotheticals.
Well, I mean, we're going to discuss it, but I'm not saying that I don't think they're discussing his job yet. Saying, I don't think they're creating hypotheticals yet. They took a long time to hire Greg Berhalter. If you remember, there was an interim for like a year and a half before they hired that job. And it was all this argument of like, man, we've had all this time. You could have been getting this group together. You could have been building the next generation. Imagine if all these guys had 10 more games to them and blah, 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 of cohesion. Well, guess what, Jimmy? There is no cohesion in this team now. We are rotating 7 players in and out of things. So I do want to be critical of that. I would say today is the first time that I personally have thought about, is Greg doing the right thing with these players and with these teams? Is he finding a way to motivate them? I know how hard it is at times to motivate players. Is he putting out the right game plan? Does the team buy into it? And when you look at today, it just felt like a day where there was a lot of players that looked like they didn't know what to do to get a result down there. And maybe that's lack of experience. Maybe that's too many changes. Maybe that's the tactics. Maybe it's a number of things that all played into just a really bad night. But then I try to okay, let's isolate that. But then I'm like, no, I got to have this connective tissue with Honduras in the first half. And I got to have this connective tissue against Canada. And I got to have this connective tissue against El Salvador. And we've been able to sweep it under the rug because we get points and we figure out how to stay in games and we claw our way back miraculously against Honduras. But now when I look at it, I go, okay, maybe there's something more to it. I hope there's not, I hope we put together a fantastic result, which I think we should at home. I don't think we've had a string of games at home yet to really, really rally around. I think Jamaica was the first point, and we go, okay, that's how we can play at home. So I want to see that against Costa Rica. I want to see a dominant performance against Costa Rica. But yeah, I think if we don't win this one, I think we're still in the thick of it all, and you get another 3 games, and I still like our chances against anybody else in the top 3. But we're now you've got Costa Rica that's in the mix. You've got El Salvador that has some belief, and like the worst thing that can happen is all these teams think that they have a chance because on any given day we've obviously shown that we can play poorly, especially away from home. And even at home against Canada. And so I'm worried about what that means for the belief in Greg Berhalter if he can't get 3 points. But like I said, I think it was on HQ. This went from being this Costa Rica game went from being a must win to being, oh my gosh, we have to win. You know, a must win because it's home game and you're supposed to win your home games, to being like, oh man, we've messed up and now we have to fix it. And that's not a great position, though I do think we have the quality to do so.
Okay, so getting some great comments about who should be the coach. Angel, want to give a shout out to Angel. He says Jimmy in. Sign me up, sucker. Heath will be my assistant. Let's roll, babe. We can even co-head coach. I don't even mind.
I'm more of like a second assistant. Like I like to get out on the pitch, set up the cones. You know what I mean? Get ready for the 5v2. Maybe jump in the 5v2 while the first assistant and the head coach are warming up the group over there on the side that are going to play that day. Maybe sling a few shots at the goalkeepers, that sort of thing. That's more of my role.
I actually think you'd be amazing at it since I know you as well as I do. And then we had a shout from Hillian who said that Hugo Perez would be a great national team coach for us. And I agree with him, but that'd be crazy to have him leave El Salvador in the middle of qualifying and go to the U.S. So that's crazy, but I'm here for it. And then we said Matt that said Oscar Pareja would be a good shout. I think it'd just be interesting. Somebody's like, well, if you had another coach, what could they do to it's just so hard to know these hypotheticals, even though I like to play and swim in those waters. We don't know what Oscar Pareja could do with this team. We don't know what Hugo Perez could do with this team. It could be worse. That is one of the options. It could be worse. And I think Greg has done a great job building culture. I think he's done a great job of identifying talent and building a very deep pool. But then that next step is, how can he get the most out of these guys? And we've seen it at times. But to a comment that was made earlier, there are times where we struggle going forward where we don't necessarily have the solutions that we need to have. And maybe there's not a lot of in-game tactics that are happening that can help unlock some of the pressure because the players, because as you know, right, you go into the game, if you're playing for 30 minutes away from home and it sucks and it's hot and it's bumpy and you don't have the ball, your frustration goes from 0 to 100 so quickly because you're like, God damn it, why can't we just get everybody in a good shape and make plays? And it's so hard to regain that. And the other team are savvy. They know exactly what they're doing and they know they have an advantage, both physically and mentally and tactically. And it's really hard to get that back. That's why I thought halftime at 0-0 was so important in this game and that we couldn't regain it. Even with a couple subs, we still couldn't find that way. I was surprised he didn't actually start Pepe the second half as well, just to kind of get him into that rhythm right away. Instead, he waited. I thought he waited a little bit too long for Pepe, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I do want to say this. Before everybody thinks that Jimmy and I are driving 120 miles an hour with our seatbelts off ready to drive off a bridge, we're not. We're just creating hypotheticals here. Yes, I do want to say this, though. This team will qualify for the World Cup. Okay. I'm not worried about that. This team, 75% of it will be the DNA and makeup of the 2026 team. And the reason I say that is because what Greg Berhalter is dealing with is a lot of young players. And we don't have, we saw that we are lacking in the last qualifying cycle who the leaders are. And leaders aren't always by age. And we're starting to see some of them emerge in terms of being reliable, being consistent, being a good like leader by voice or by tone or by example with the team. We're seeing the team go through the throes of the controversies of Weston McKennie. We're seeing Tyler Adams' role emerge. Tyler Adams has, I think I saw today was like 17 caps. Can you believe that he has 17 caps? That's it.
I know. It feels like he's been there for there. He's going to be our captain moving forward.
And so when I look at this team, I again look, our most capped players were Paul Arriola, Giassi Zardes. I think Sebastian Lletget is up there. But when I look at DeAndre Yedlin, obviously, but outside of that, you're talking about guys in single digits, maybe early double digits in caps across the board, our best players. You know, we're talking about Ricardo Pepi on match 3, I guess, of his national team run right now. We're talking about, and I guess Kellen Acosta's in the 40s as well. But outside of that, these are young players. And I think this is what you have to go through. You have to go through some of these tough times as players. You wish that they weren't at the detriment to us as fans as result that come with the lack of results. But that is the upside that's going to come out of all this, is the cohesion that's being built, the unity that's being built out of these hardships and these hard times, both good times and bad, that will lead this team forward, not just now, but we're talking about young players. We're not just talking about our best guys in the prime of their careers getting us to a World Cup, and then we cross our fingers, hope we don't get in the group of death, which we will, and then try to get results. We're talking about building a foundation for the future. And then when you look at the pipeline of, not Brendan Aronson, I'm talking about Paxton Aronson, 18 years old, and what he's going to be, and the next generation of players that are going to fight for these spots. That's what makes me excited, even on a tough night like tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I heard a lot about our 2005 class. So our U17s right now are absolutely sick. And those guys are going to be around the same age as the Yunus Musas and the George Bellows now. So when you start to add in that level of talent with what these guys theoretically getting into their prime, the future is incredibly bright. And we've been saying that for a long time. It's just a matter of time. We're actually here now. And now we just need to take that one extra step. Now, our schedule is a little interesting. Obviously, we got Costa Rica coming up. The next window in November is only 2 games. So it kind of gets back into the normalcy of what a normal qualifier used to look like when me and Heath were still playing. We got Mexico at home and away to Jamaica. And that one, obviously, two tricky ties there. So it's going to be interesting times for the U.S. And Moloko wanted to say that there are some players like Zardes, Leggett, Areola, and Acosta who will be long gone by 2026.
Yeah, 4 of 26. That's 4. You got 20 other players. You got 30 other players right now that are knocking on the door that are like 21, 22 years old. Those guys, no problem. Like,
that's part of it. That's part of the evolution of it, right? When you have younger players that are better, they push out the older guys, and that's just how it works. And it sucks when you become one of the older guys that gets pushed out, but that's how it works.
I'm almost at 10 years since my last cap. I think it was 2012 in Panama. By the way, my last cap I think was away in Panama. I just realized that right now.
No way.
And it was I think it was 2012. The last one. We're going on a decade ago. Yeah, who's counting? Who's
Nobody's
counting.
counting.
We let it go. We let it go like within a week of the last one.
We're fine. So let's just talk really quick and pivot just to some of the other results. Anything that surprised you? Jamaica getting a 0-0 result against Canada. Costa Rica coming back against El Salvador, going down 1-0, and then needing a Brian Ruiz goal. I think that guy's older than us, actually. He scored in the 52nd minute, and then they got a pen in the 58th minute to win that one 2-1. So that's Celso Borges got the 6 minutes later. So they scored 2 goals in 6 minutes. I was hoping the U.S. would pull out some of that magic as well. They couldn't make it happen after going down. And then you have the other result is Mexico beating Honduras 3-0. Pretty comprehensive performance. A performance they needed, frankly, because there's a lot of people asking for Tata Martino's head. Now, I do want to say that it was only 1-0. And then Maynor Figueroa got a red card in the 49th minute. And then Funes Mori scored. He needed to score. 76th minute, and then Chucky Lozano scored in the 86th minute to really ice it for him. They needed that type of performance. What scares me about Mexico, just to pivot to them very quickly, is I still don't think we've seen them play their best. And they're on top of the table with 11 points. And if they can figure that out, they're going to run away with this qualifying window, and it's going to be everybody else chasing for that 2nd and 3rd spot.
Yeah, I will say they've had now 3 of their 5 games at home, right? So I would love for the U.S. to get that 3rd game and be able to jump to similar points. But you're right. They're finding a way to get a little bit more out of performances that have been a little stop-start. I think it was pretty comprehensive against Honduras. There were chances that I think could have come back to haunt them at times. They were just knocking on the door.
They only gave up one shot on goal, though. They only gave up one shot on goal.
Yeah, they only gave up one shot, and they were just when Chucky Lozano is back on the field now, and Jimenez is back on the field now, and now they've got what's his name? I'm blanking his name, and he's actually
Tecatito.
No, not Tecatito. He's back, but like
Hector
Moreno back in the back line. They're just starting.
He makes such a big difference, by the way, Hector Moreno.
Yeah, he brings a calm to the team. He brings a calm to them and everything that they do. But when you look at them again, and you start to see, okay, they change 3 pieces back into the team, and you go, man, this team is really good on the attack. This team is really organized. And yeah, there was still some chaos where Honduras had a few looks on goal, or they were able to spread them out or get them when they're a little disjointed, like anybody in CONCACAF. But like, they're still getting the points. That's the thing. They're still getting the points even when they're not at their best, and they're trending upwards. And I think the U.S. is doing this kind of like heartbeat type of thing, where like this pulsing of a heartbeat, where it's kind of up and down and up and down. And that's not a strong foundation to rely on, where I think Mexico is just slowly getting better, and they're continuing to get points with it, which is
getting healthy too.
Yeah.
No, to your point, I mean, I was looking at their team that they started today, and this is solid. This front three is sick. I mean, you got Tecatito, Raul Jimenez, and Chucky Lozano as your front three. Okay, maybe they weren't firing on all cylinders against Canada, but you knew they were going to somehow at some point find their way. You got Herrera, Alvarez, Cordoba in midfield, and then Rodriguez, Montes, Hector Moreno, who I think is so key to them, and Gallardo playing left back, and then Memo Ochoa in goal, who can always save your bacon if you're having a bad day and get you a result single-handedly. He's done it time and time again. That is a solid team. And even then, Mexican fans aren't happy with Tata Martino. They expect that team to do even more than what they're doing. And I think I want to tie that into the U.S. because I think what's frustrating for us is that we know that we should be competing with Mexico, given the talent that we have, and that we did go toe-to-toe with them over the summer in 2 different tournaments. And yet we're still kind of at times either playing at the level of our competition or below it. We're not running away with it. We saw some evidence of that in the second half against Jamaica and obviously against Honduras, another qualifying window. But we're not doing it consistently enough. And I think that's what frustrates a lot of us fans, whether we're experienced fans and love the team for the beginning of time or new fans that are casual and now just want to get behind the team. There's just that element of we should be playing better. I hear from a lot of people like, how is it possible you guys are losing to Panama? And I'm like, well, it's just not as easy as people think it is. But there is something that we can control, which is something you've been talking about, a big theme with you, Heath, is we can control how we perform and our attitude and how we move and still kind of have these disciplines that allow us to flow and have rhythm as a team. And we just didn't see any of that tonight. And because we made 7 changes to the lineup, I think that's a big reason why. And when the people that were texting me and we were talking about this game at halftime, I'm like, what did you expect to see? 7 changes is, of course, going to stifle any type of cohesion that we've been talking about and wanting and desiring. And to your point, when we played, there was always like 8 or 9 guys that you knew that were going to start every single game. And it was just us fighting for the scraps of like, can we be a super sub? Can we be one of those starters that's up for grabs? You know, it was that solidified. And maybe Greg is tinkering too much. We already know he overthinks a little bit on formation and player lineups, and him texting players now late at night telling them they're going to start. Interesting timing for me. Couldn't just wait till the morning. He's so excited, I guess, to let everybody know. So there's a lot bundled in here, and obviously we're emotional. Everybody watching is emotional. Everybody wanted to have a better performance. We didn't get it. First time we've ever lost to Panama in World Cup qualifying. So leaving you with that, I just want to know your thoughts, final thoughts on this, because I just want to remind everybody we're going to have a special preview show podcast, special emergency podcast of a preview of the Costa Rica game that's happening on Wednesday. I think that'll be dropping on Tuesday. Producer Des can correct me in my ear in the little private chat we have. But any final thoughts that you have, Heath Pearce, about this? Anybody have any other comments before we go? Listen, the silver lining is we can win this game. I just want to say it actually before I throw it over to you, Heath. The silver lining for me is we could beat Costa Rica and have 6 points in this window, which is 1 more point than we had in the first window when we didn't lose any games. So let's just try to
Who does Mexico? What are those last games? Just so I have I'm trying to think through what that last round of games of who plays who
for us.
Yeah, so we play Costa Rica at home.
Yes,
and then who does Mexico play? Do we know?
This upcoming up.
Yeah, this upcoming.
They play away to El Salvador.
Okay, away to El Salvador.
Canada hosts Panama.
Okay.
Honduras hosts Jamaica.
Yeah, so this is
we host Costa Rica.
Yeah, so this is the Honduras. I mean, Canada Panama game is fantastic for us. So you win that, and you can start to see a little bit where you can start to build a little bit of a gap.
We need them to draw.
I think. Yeah. I see Mexico winning against El Salvador. I think that could humble El Salvador a little bit. Again, El Salvador, I don't want to write them off because Mexico didn't win out in their first games, right? I think they were 7 points after the first 3 games, but yeah, overall, the U.S. Should be able to win this game against Costa Rica. I don't. And if they play the way that they played against Jamaica, which is good, not great, I think that beats Costa Rica. I think it was enough of a complete performance where
solid. No problem.
At no point did Jamaica look like they were in it. They had a few half chances, but they weren't the sharpest. It wasn't the most beautiful I've seen the U.S. play, but they played in a way that was disciplined. It was energetic. It sort of dictated the flow of the game from start to finish, where Jamaica never really found their feet. Jamaica, obviously, I think a very different type of squad than Costa Rica. Costa Rica having a ton of experience to be able to get into these games.
Save this for the preview pod, man.
Yeah,
you're getting into the good stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm jumping away from that. But I do think that the silver lining from all of this will be the fact that we got more experience from these players. We talk about 7 players changing. When I look at those 7 players, Jimmy, George Bello, Shaq Moore, we're talking about Mark McKenzie and Walker Zimmerman playing together for the first time. These are things that could happen again in the future, but oddly they happened for the first time, right, tonight. And oddly, we had a lot of these players getting this experience for the first time tonight. So we have more players getting more experience, and that I think will start to narrow down the squad over time. Maybe over this window, maybe the next window, we'll start to chop away and say, hey, why do we need 26 players in camp? Maybe we need 23, or maybe you need 26 because of depth, but you're starting to look at your 15 best players are the ones you're going to rotate through, and you're going to make 4 changes moving forward instead of 7, and all those things that start to carve out the identity of the team and people proving themselves. Because I still think there's a lot of guys who have a ton of potential that are very young that haven't proven themselves. And maybe it's not this cycle. Maybe it's the next one where they get a chance to. But we want to start to eliminate players because somebody has stepped up and said, you know what? This is my job. This is my position. And I'm not letting anybody take it from me ever again.
No, I love that. And I also want to say that I'm a little nervous already for Wednesday's game against Costa Rica, because it went from, as Heath correctly said earlier, it went from a game where it was must win to about 3 levels higher than that now after this loss to Panama, where it is absolute must win. And maybe Greg Berhalter and the players like to play under this type of pressure. They seem to be masochists in some ways with some of the formations and decisions that the coaching staff in particular are making. But I'm excited to preview it. So make sure you come back and join us for that. It'll be available for you on this very channel on Tuesday and on podcast, whatever podcast platform that you like to listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe both here on YouTube. Please make that happen, and make sure you're doing it on the podcast platforms as well. We really appreciate your support. It allows us to give you more and more free content, because that's what we want. We're going to make this as free as possible for everybody. So do us a solid and hit that subscribe button. Leave us a 5-star review if you're up for that as well. And then, of course, we're going to do the same thing on Wednesday after the game that we're doing right now. We're going to sit here and hopefully we're celebrating. I got some champagne over here. I'm going to break it out if we can do the business and actually play in a way that's like we get a solid three points, and we just play a way that I think it satisfies, just like we did against Jamaica. Just do that again like we did play against Jamaica, and I'll be definitely very happy. And then if you want to follow us on the internets, on the Twitters, go to Qué Golazo Pod, at QUE Golazo Pod. Make sure you subscribe, as we said before, on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. I'm Jimmy Conrad, maybe your 9th favorite, former U.S. men's national team player, alongside, I don't know where Heath fits on the list, but we appreciate your support. Thank you so much, Heath. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching, and we will see you next time. Later.